This is Fresh Air. I'm Tonya Mosley. This has been quite a year so far for my guest, Natasha Rothwell. She returns to the third season of the popular HBO show The White Lotus. And just this past weekend, her Hulu series How to Die Alone, which she created and starred in, won an Independent Spirit Award for Best Ensemble Cast and a new scripted series. But that win is bittersweet because the show, which premiered last September, was canceled after just one season. Well, Rothwell's return to The White Lotus signals a deeper dive into the tension between entitlement and servitude, which has been present along with murder in every season of the show. It follows the storyline of seemingly picture-perfect travelers with various dysfunctions who go to the White Lotus resort to escape. In the first season, Rothwell's character Belinda is a spa manager at the Hawaii location. She meets a wealthy visitor named Tonya, played by Jennifer Coolidge, and the two strike up a friendship. Belinda shares her dreams of opening up her own spa with Tonya.
I do think that there's a purpose in helping even rich people, you know? Helping them to find healing, making them feel more present, more aware.
Yeah.
Because rich people, they're the ones that, up the whole world.
Yeah. I mean, I know a lot of rich, white people. They could really use you. Have you ever thought about starting, like, your own business?
Come on.
No, because I would be down for funding something like that.
We watch as Tonya flakes on Belinda, never funding her dream to open a spa, instead running off with another guest who goes on to con and attempt to have Coolidge's character killed. Well, in this latest season in Thailand, Belinda experiences the other side of the guest-staff dynamic as a visitor, taking part in a White Lotus exchange program. Natasha Rothwell is an award-winning actor, writer, and series creator. Her early start in comedy included a stint as a writer on Saturday Night Live during the 2014-15 season. She also starred in HBO's Insecure as Issa's hilarious and sexually liberated friend Kelli. She also served as a writer and supervising producer on the show. Natasha Rothwell, welcome to Fresh Air.
Thank you for having me.
First, let's talk a little bit about The White Lotus, because fans of The White Lotus were very happy to see you return, intrigued because we know that your return means something pretty big. And this season, she's at the Thailand resort. So she's there to relax and, as I said, learn a few new things to bring back to the resort in Maui. Well, in the clip I'm about to play, your character, Belinda, shares what she's been through to a wellness expert assigned to train her, Ponchai, played by Dom Hetrical. Let's listen.
So, you like Thailand?
Very much.
I am happy.
Before I got here, I was depressed. My friend, he was my boss, actually, he died in this freak accident at work. And this woman, this rich woman, she's supposed to help me open up my own spa, so I could be my own boss. Something I've always wanted to do. And of course, she flakes, runs off with some guy she just met.
That was my guest today, Natasha Rothwell, in the latest season of The White Lotus. I have to say, the music is always like the other character in the room, isn't it? It's just what Mike White does with music.
It's so special. It really is.
Well, Belinda is such a fascinating character. I'm so interested to see how this season pays off in seeing what becomes of her, because she has this veneer of sweetness that kind of hides this sense of dejection and growing resentment that I assume that she feels by being like stiffed by Tonya. How was it to return to her character?
I think in the time that audiences saw her before,
as they just heard, she's experienced some depression. And I think that happens naturally when you open yourself up vulnerably about your dreams to someone, especially if that someone is a stranger. You're taking kind of a big swing. And I think she felt really, hurt and dejected after that rejection from Tonya. But I do think we find her on the precipice of change. She's taking a pretty big swing, going to a country she's never been to before. She's going there by herself at first until her son can join her. And I think when someone does something like that, it speaks to their optimism. And I think that it's really fun to meet someone when they're about to try again.
I think I heard you say that Belinda kind of represents the person you used to be.
Yeah, no, I think, season 1, she swallowed a lot of blood, and didn't say what was on her mind, and, was very, obliging. And I think that that's partly because she's working in a place where she can't really articulate her POV and her needs and advocate for them because she's there to serve. But I do think there's parts of that she could have fought against. And I think when we see her now, she's sort of straddling that line of, being an employee and the guest. And, when she's leaning on that foot that's in the guest lane, she's allowing herself to speak up and advocate for her needs a little bit more, which I think it's always cool to see someone audition sort of that kind of version of themselves. Mm-hmm. And I think that's vacationing 101, right? You go and you're like, who am I going to be here? You know? Right. And so I think she does that a bit as well.
This season is in Thailand, but something that I found so interesting is Mike White, who is the writer, the creator of The White Lotus. Season 1, he had no idea what he had on his hands. You're just making this cool thing, and you don't know how the public will receive it. I mean, it is such a hit now. How different was it for you on the set for this one versus the first season?
Yeah. Mike jokingly said that season 1 was basically a Zoom TV show comparatively. We were, we had one location. We weren't permitted to leave because of the COVID protocols. We were shooting.
You were shooting in Hawaii during COVID.
Yeah, pre-vaccination. Mm-hmm. So it was, we were one of the first, if not the first, production back. And there was a lot of fear, and fear is a really tough place to make anything creative. But Mike somehow created this environment that made us feel safe. And we were sold on a limited series. It was one and done. And, I watched season 2 with everyone from home, excited. And there was really no expectation that I would come back. And I didn't have it. I didn't, I'm not the type of, creator or actor that fights for it because I have deference to the pen for sure. And so I watched and was excited. And then when Mike asked me to be a part of season 3, I was gagged, because it's bigger. But I think for me, what grounded me in the bigness of what the show has become are the people. And, showing up on set, I'm seeing, the same hair and makeup team. I'm seeing the same DP, the same AD. And, it was just felt like returning home. I was like, oh yeah, the heart and soul of the show is the same. It's the perception that's increased. So it felt very comforting to land in Thailand and remember that it is just at the end of the day a group of people just trying to make some art.
How long did you guys spend in Thailand to shoot?
It varied per actor. I was there for about 5 months.
Wow.
Yeah. It was not a short trip.
There's a theme in the show of mindfulness, and there are lots of references to Buddhism. And really, for these characters, the visitors of this resort, they're coming to grips with the ugliness of who they are in their individual ways. Did you have a spiritual experience while you were in Thailand, or was it work, work, work?
No, I think that you can't help but have a spiritual experience there. It's such a special place. I learned while I was there, Thailand has never been colonized. And so it's a really interesting juxtaposition to being from the States where we're constantly in this, trauma response from our history. And to go to a place that doesn't have that, it brings out, at some level, a certain kind of levity of just being alive. And
can you describe or explain, like, give an example of what you mean by that, like the
Yeah.
differences?
I mean, they call it the land of smiles. You meet people, there's no preconceived notions of who you are, where you're from. And I think, walking around the world as a Black woman, there's all these suppositions about who I am and where I'm from and what I believe in. And they wait for you to declare who you are, what you are about. And even in the language, I found so interesting. When I say swadika, the K is the feminine sort of identifier, and it's given, not received. So even the power to identify, when you say hello to someone, I say the ka to let you know how to receive me.
How to, what, right. Oh,
And
that's so interesting.
Even so, it's not the other outside in sort of descriptor saying what you are. It's not the world telling you what you are. You're declaring it when you say hello. So it's small things like that. And I think that there's a warmth and a genuine, spirit of acceptance there that just is pervasive.
There is a scene in the show. It's where you're waiting for dinner and you see another Black guest there. That was written into the show because you mentioned it to Mike White, right?
Yeah, I pitched it to him. That we're close, and I tell him about my travels and the like, and with Belinda being in a foreign country, I was just reiterating the importance of Black travel, and how once when I was traveling to Ireland, I was at some castle on the top of some misty hill. I can't remember, but what I do remember is when I was there, I was the only Black person I could see, but this Black family, a mother, father, and 2 kids that were like around 12 or 11, sort of walk up the hill and break through the mist. And I just looked at them and they looked at me, and we just kind of walked towards each other and hugged. And I was explaining to Mike, I was just like, when you see yourself reflected in a space that it just lets you know you belong there, Mm-hmm. I think when Belinda in that moment sees this couple, it's just there. Mm-hmm. She sees that, and it's this, I think, internal affirmation that she can lean back and enjoy her wine in this moment. She doesn't have to be in this servile position as a default. She can experience life from that perspective as well.
There are so many themes that this series unpacks through these individual characters and their journeys. Is there any one in particular that really lights you up, or you really are thinking deeply about as you're watching the series? Because it's actually quite deep when you start to think about these issues of servitude and white privilege and wealth and access and all of that.
Yeah, I think that is such a great question, because I think that when you're talking about servitude specifically, and Belinda being in a servile position but stepping out of that this season, I think it highlights code switching. It highlights sort of the passport you need to sort of move between those two spaces. I think she's often seen as sort of like this moral compass, moral center, which I think flirts with the idea of sort of the magical Negro that, doesn't have that any problem. She's there to make sense of white mess. Belinda serves as such an interesting ruler to measure the other characters against.
Natasha, it took you 8 years to get this show made. And after it was announced that it was canceled, you said this is an undeniable hit. This is a critical, creative, and award-winning show. Did you feel like executives gave up on it too soon?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was pretty shocked. The landscape of Hollywood has been interesting, I think, in a post-strike world, but I think even zooming farther out, I think television led by Black stars and shows that are centering marginalized voices aren't getting the support and placement that they need. I think it's unfortunate that How to Die Alone didn't meet the metric that the studio was using to make their decision. But I'm so proud of what I've created, and I think for me it just tells me that I'm just gonna continue to fight harder.
This was such an original show. It was also autobiographical in many
In a bit.
ways.
In
a bit. Like, it's
a
not
bit.
literal,
No.
but I mean, the main character, Mel, is described as, I mentioned, a broke, fat black woman who has given up on herself until she almost dies in like the saddest way. This cheap bookshelf falls on her in her apartment. And that's when she has this awakening, like, what am I doing in life? Like, something similar happened to you.
Yeah. I've been fat and black my whole life, but outside of those two, no, I was, I had like this toothache, and I'm very famously allergic to acetaminophen and other NSAIDs at varying degrees. And I took one because it was just, I had this dental work and it's been so long, and I was like, how bad can it be? I'm sure I'm over it by now. And so I think my pain took over common sense, and I took some NSAIDs and just started swelling up like Hitch, and drove myself to the urgent care because it was ambulance is an expensive thing in the States. And, they shot me with an EpiPen and reminded me not to take NSAIDs. And I was like, yeah, I know. But I just remember being in that waiting room and being even seen in the back. They were just like, you have to wait for this medicine to take effect. Who can take you home? And I didn't have anyone. And I was just like, this ain't it. So it's little moments like that. I remember there's another moment where in the show, the character of Mel goes toe to toe with some umlaut furniture, our homage to perhaps IKEA. Right. And I had a similar situation where I had a shelf bonk me in the head. I didn't lose consciousness or anything like that, but it was just like, I was fighting with aloneness, and, the pride I think I had with asking for help at the time. And so I wanted to write a character who had this wake-up call and wasn't fixed immediately. I think so often we see, fat girl gets bonked on the head. She wakes up and realizes, she needs a man to fix her problems. Right. And then she needs to go to the gym and all is right. And for me, body neutrality is where I've arrived, and like I didn't want to, promote, the never-ending wheel of like the wellness industrial complex of like, let's just throw a workout at her and a man and it'll be solved. It's much deeper.
Tell me about your relationship with the word fat, because it's in all of the descriptions of this show, and you wrote it.
Yeah. I went into many meetings, many Zooms over that word because, folks were scared of it. And my journey with the word, when I was younger, I used to cry when I was called it. And then, cut to now, I wanted that word to no longer be pejorative. It's just a fact. It has no indication of my heart, my intellect, my creativity, my business acumen, my my kindness. Like, so to take back that word and put it in the description. And it's so often I've been in interviews where they won't say that part of the description because they feel weird about it. It lets me know how comfortable someone is with me being in their space. And I had a meeting before we start production, which is, very common, that, the showrunners will talk to all of the staff and the crew on this giant big call. We're all on Zoom. And I addressed everyone on the call sheet. I said, the word fat is not pejorative. So when you are on set and you're using this word in a pejorative way, no, that is not accepted. If you eat a big lunch and you say, oh, I feel fat, right? Which we're all want to do. But like, that is something that tells me you feel uncomfortable with the idea that you are not a straight size or you are not small. And you're talking to or around or in earshot of someone who is plus size, it's telling them consciously or subconsciously, that you are disgusted with them.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to use it in a positive light, go ahead. Call somebody a fatty batty, keep it pushing.
Right.
But we are not going to create a space where anyone is going to be made to feel discomfort based off of that word.
You auditioned for SNL.
Mm-hmm.
You ended up being a writer. Tell me a little bit about that audition and that time period, because this is, if I'm correct, this is like the time period when they were looking for a Black woman.
Yeah, they had their mission pretty clear. But I was in New York at the time and had been working at this high school as a theater teacher for about 4 years. As I landed in New York around 2009. And at this point, I had, left my job teaching and was just like pushing all the chips in on my career. Had so many gig jobs.
You were teaching theater to
Yeah.
what age group?
9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th.
Okay,
Yeah.
so high schoolers. Was there ever a moment in those 4 years where you were thinking like, maybe this is my life, or did you always know it's a temporary thing?
I was working at, community centers down in, Flatbush. And at the same time, I started teaching at Upright Citizens Brigade. And so I became really enmeshed in the education program at UCB, this time with adults and improv. And they had way more understanding with this lifestyle of needing to leave to go do an audition. And one of those auditions was SNL. And I got word that, they were doing these special secret showcases with Black ladies because, very famously, Kenan and Jay Farrow didn't want to wear drag anymore. Mm-hmm. And I got a place on this showcase. And just shot my shot, and terms of being on stage.
What was your audition? Do you remember?
It was I had a lot of different things that I auditioned with. I had a drunk Maya Angelou impression. I had.
Why is that making me laugh? Just even thinking about it.
It's just fun. And then I did an impression of Kenan, which was just making looks with my eyes. There was no dialogue, and after that, I did get a call back, and that meant we auditioned at Studio 8H. So we went down to 30 Rock, and of those who made it the second round of auditions, you would go into the famous Studio 8H, and in the audience is Lorne Michaels, and then it's populated by, past and present cast members, writers, executives, and it's famously a very, very cold room, and everyone tells you no one's going to laugh. It's going to be really quiet. And I was auditioning alongside, Sashir and Leslie Jones and all of these major, major comedians. And I was terrified. I was absolutely terrified. But it was, again, one of those things where I was just like, just go hard or go home. And I did get laughs during mine, which gave me some feel goods. And it was the Kenan impression because he was in the room, and he told me once I finally was in the writer's room, he was like, you were killing me, because I was just basically pulling face, which is just like, something he's known for. And to do it in front of him got the room to laugh.
Is there something you wrote that you are most proud of on the show?
Yes. I worked with Taraji P. Henson on her monologue, which I'm so excited.
I actually have a clip of this. So Taraji P. Henson hosted the show in 2015, and at the time she was starring in the Fox show Empire as Cookie Lyons, and the name of the monologue is I Made It. Let's listen to a little bit.
This is so nice. Oh my God, being on Saturday Night Live really means so much to me because it proves that after 20 years in show business, white people finally know who I am. Now, look, I've been around a while, but a lot of you are just getting to know me as Cookie on Empire. Thank you. No, real talk. This role changed my life. I mean, I spent so many years hustling in this business, and now I'm here. So, I guess you could say I made it. Hallelujah.
Don't worry about where you are. Be grateful that you've come this far. You may not always come in first. Just remember that it could be worse. have been a hip hop video. Oh, did it once or twice, but not no more. None of that stuff matters now, 'cause I made it. Oh, yes, she made it. Used to tip 5, but now it's 30%. Oh, she made it. Oh, yes, I made it. Almost sold my organs just to pay the rent. I gotta keep it. Oh, yes, I made it. Could have passed out.
That was Taraji P. Henson in 2015 in her opening monologue on SNL, written by my guest today. I love that. Like, it's part monologue, it's part song. Did you write the song?
Yeah, like it's a team effort there for sure. So I have not heard that since. It's so
Oh,
funny.
really?
Yeah. I was like, oh wow, I do remember. No, it was a team effort, and the music was inspired. You know, I grew up in the church, and John P. Key, has some really early 90s, late 80s jams that would be like, you would be cooking.
Yeah.
And so I just remember working with the music director, and I was like, we got to hit these. It has to have that sauce.
It's also so real, like all the things
Yeah.
that she listed. It goes on to say, like, all these other things that, these things you take for granted that
Yeah.
show that I made it.
She made it. And I felt like she was singing for me for sure, because there I was, like, writing for this iconic show that I had truly no aspirations to be on, because I didn't see myself on the show. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't see
So
someone
it was
who looked
never a
like me.
dream of yours, even not seeing yourself.
No. I mean, Ellen Cleghorn, who was in my show How to Die Alone, I just remember her in early sketches. And there was this whole period of time where it was just Black men in drag. And I didn't see myself as being on screen there, and I didn't think it would be an option. So I was just like, well, I know I'm going to make it, but I don't know if it's going to be by way of SNL. And so when I was there, working on the sketch, and it was just, it was for both of us. I was just like, well, both of us are here. And we didn't think we would be. So it was pretty cool.
Pretty soon after, you started working on Insecure. Like, was that whiplash, or was it a lot different? Was it similar?
It was very different. It's, night and day, because once you have SNL on your resume, it's like a stamp and a passport. And a lot of people want you to, to be a part of their shows. And Amy Gravitt, who's still a wonderful friend and still an amazing executive at HBO, was in New York and wanted to meet with me for this show from the woman who created Awkward Black Girl. And I was like, I love that show. So yeah, I'll meet with her. What's this show about? And she's like, we shot a pilot, but we're opening up a writer's room for Insecure. And I was like, absolutely. I would want to meet, because I just loved Awkward Black Girl so much. And
I am an awkward
I was
black
like,
girl. That's what you were saying to
yes,
yourself.
I was shouting it
Yeah.
from the rooftops. And so when I would see her show on YouTube, I didn't know it had was heading to the, to HBO to be on a bigger screen, and jumped right into that and moved coasts and everything.
So you were a writer on the show, but can you quickly tell the story of then how you came to be Kelli?
Yes.
Because there was a moment with everyone where it became apparent that you are Kelli.
I had zero aspirations to try to jockey to be on the screen. I was just like, I just want to be the best writer possible. And about a month into the writer's room, Ben Dugan, who was one of the writers on the show, had pitched, growing Issa's friendship circle just for writing. And so that we could have, diversified stories. And that's where, the characters of Tiffany and Kelli came along. And as a room, we're pitching their characteristics and things like that. And, wrote a few scripts with her in it. And a part of Issa's process is to read all the scripts aloud, the writers reading the scripts aloud in the writer's room, just so we can hear it and making sure that it sings. And I was always being cast as Kelli, because she would cast us in the writer's room. And I'm never not myself. And I obviously know I have the ability to like sell this character. And I thought I was selling it for its existence. I was like not trying to sell myself for it. I was just like, I love this character so much. I want her to live.
Yeah.
And I just remember, as we have these scripts generated and the casting process started, Issa and Prentice called me in their office, and they're just like, you Kelli, right? And I like burst into tears, because I didn't see it coming.
I want to actually play a clip to remind folks of Kelli and who she was. In this scene, she is talking about her work as an accountant. Let's listen.
That's why I make sure my white clients get less on their tax returns. It's reparations. That's what that is. I feel like Robin Hood. You know what I mean?
It's the facts.
It's just right. I don't care if I get in trouble. I'm doing it. That's what I marched for. I took off work so I could walk down the street and do to white people, finally. Real talk, don't tell nobody because I'm going to go to full jail.
I'm not surprised.
Like, you ever seen Lock Up Abroad? They going to lock abroad up.
That's my guest, Natasha Rothwell at HBO's Insecure.
I'm cracking up because that was definitely like a huge improvised moment. And so...
So that wasn't written.
Some of it, I think it started off, but then I go on this tangent about wanting to make white people pay more in their taxes, and we were just going back and forth. And then I'm sure it ended with her breaking, or one of us breaking.
Natasha, you mentioned how you grew up with parents who were in the military. Did you move around a lot?
I did. My dad was in the Air Force. And yeah, I was born in Wichita, Kansas, and I was there for maybe the first year of my life, year and a half maybe, so I have really no memories of that. My older sister was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico. My brother was born in New Jersey. We lived in Florida, Illinois, Turkey, at the Incirlik Air Force Base there. Maryland, yeah, and then my dad was stationed at the Pentagon, and then he retired as a commander at Fort Dix, and so it was a lot of moving around.
Yeah.
It's all I knew. So there's no kind of like, I didn't lament my upbringing. I was just like curious of people who didn't live like that. You know what I mean?
Your parents, they've been married over 40 years?
They were up 47 years yesterday.
Wow. I mean, that's aspirational.
It's goals. It's goals.
Has it ever felt like...
Oppressive?
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. I mean, they have this unbelievable love story, and, I wrote a show about how to die alone. So I definitely, I would be like, okay, they set a pretty high bar, but I'm, as much as I resented it, I think, especially in my early 20s where I was just sort of tapping my watch, I'm so grateful for them as an example, because they ride so hard for each other, and it gives me something to look forward to myself.
I've heard you describe yourself as neurospicy. What does that mean?
Well, now I know it means that I have pretty severe ADHD. I'm late diagnosed. And yeah, I've always known that I see the world a little bit differently. I've had previous therapists suggest that I might have ADHD, but I didn't really pursue that or identify as that. I just was just like, oh yeah, my brain works a little bit different. And last year, actually, I got an official diagnosis, and it was heartbreaking a little bit. I think I was like resisting the diagnosis because it meant, like, when I looked at my life in hindsight, there are all these moments of empathy I have for that girl that was struggling, who had no idea why. And I just took it as a moral failure, coming from the church. I was like, oh yeah, I need to pray this inability to sit still out. And I need to pray this lack of focus and attention out, And now knowing that my brain's just wired differently, it was kind of a painful diagnosis in that respect, but then so freeing, because it was just like, oh, I don't have to mask the fact that, like, I have no short-term memory. Like, it's so terrible, and I don't have to feel bad about it, but I can announce it, be like, hey, I have really severe ADHD. So if you say something to me, I might have to write it down, or you're going to have to tell me more than once, or,
Well, part of you kind of like being in denial about it, was it also because so many of like the descriptors are not like the things we know ADHD to be?
Correct. I didn't know the full sort of scope of what someone with ADHD presents as, like it's so varied, it's so deep, it's so complex. And especially for Black women, we are so high functioning that we can mask so many of the things that are markers for ADHD because we have trained ourselves to show up in a way that's acceptable. And so my whole life has been acceptability politics. So I have known how to show up and pretend I hear you and, pretend to be focused and to correct my behaviors and, laugh off this mistake. And there's a whole sort of circus that I think that I was able to put down once I realized I had the diagnosis. And every day I'm still learning more, where I'm just like, I'm forever inquisitive about myself, probably to the point that I shouldn't be. My therapist is just like, you don't have to have an explanation for everything. And I'm like,
Some things just are,
some
huh?
things just are. But I love being in this part of my life where I get to ask those questions and be curious about my own behavior and embrace the fact that, yeah, I'm an ADHD baddie.
Natasha Rothwell, this was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking with you.